Now, you've gone into organizations to help them develop mentoring programs, to help them develop
Mm,
themselves in a mentoring capacity.
mm.
What, how does organizations take on board mentoring in a way that helps the employees develop rather than coaching?
I'd say mentoring is a very powerful mechanism if you understand what it really is. I feel mentoring is very misunderstood. I feel that it's loosely used. And everyone's a mentor, and because of that, sometimes people don't understand that there are levels to mentoring. There's a art to mentoring, there's a science to mentoring. There's strategic type of mentoring, there's mentoring that achieves different types of objectives. But the heart of mentoring is around developing relationships.
Employers are going back to work now, focusing on rebuilding their business, the bottom line, profit needs to come in, money needs to start coming in, work needs to get done. Why is it so important for staffing to have a safe place to express themselves at work?
I mean, it's key because, as I said at the start of our talk, it don't matter what business you're in. You're in the people business. Unless you've got your work that's automated and it's machines that's delivering your work, you've got people that are delivering your work. So if your people are not well, your people are not doing good personally, that's going to impact their work professionally. You can separate it to some extent, but when you start speaking about the kind of experiences that a lot of people have gone through as a society, it's not like it's just one person. It's not like just there's one person or two people or a few people that haven't been able to manage their lives correctly and really, like you say, you're a professional, you know compartmentalize your life, leave that at the door. It's we're talking about it's everyone that's gone through the same thing,
Oh,
and that is a different dynamic. And it's almost like organizations need to become much more conscientious, much more thoughtful around how they support their people holistically, because one of the biggest challenge for a lot of workplaces are going to be if they don't take care of their people, and their people are not able to manage their stress levels or manage their mental health. You'll start getting people missing days, people not being able to turn up at work, getting signed off. um, and that would be a massive issue for the workplace, because then you'll have to go through compliance and go through procedure, and that, so it's almost like organizations and people need to become much more proactive and preventative in their thinking instead of waiting for things to happen.
you mentioned earlier emotional intelligence, and sometimes sometimes we hear these buzzwords around us all the time, emotional intelligence, something, yeah, and companies tick off the box. We've got that going on in the company. But as you said, we're dealing with people and their emotions. And so by dealing with their the emotional side, why do we think that coming out of COVID-19, emotional intelligence should be on the top of the leadership development platform?
Hmm. Because society at present now is much more needy. It's a different landscape. The landscape is different, not just in, socially or economically. It's family, personally, spiritually, mentally. It's everything. It's so different. And the biggest things that really impact people is, mental, spiritual, emotional. It's them as a person, because they're people first. We are all people first and professional second. And I feel that there's a big shift in people are having to address their identity as well. Because if work is something that has given you the sense of meaning of who you are, and all of a sudden you're not at work, then it's easy to think, who are you? And it can impact your self esteem and impact your sense of self and all that kind of stuff. And all that stuff impacts work, it impacts relationships, relationships will impact work. So it's all it's just all connected.
So
And
if work has been your source of identity, and all of a sudden you've been pulled back from work, you've been yanked out of that position, you believe that really affects the way you feel about yourself?
well, it would, wouldn't it? If your work is what gives you confidence, or your work is what gives you a sense of this is who you are, and that makes you feel relevant, that makes you feel like you belong, or your work environment is more healthy than your home environment, um, then that would impact you as a person. It would.
This is amazing. I mean, we have gone so deep with this on that emotional intelligence level, because I remember speaking to Dr. Rochelle Carr, and she was talking about this as well, about the shift in organizations to dealing with people on this level. But I never really thought that mentoring kind of connects it all. And it seems like mentoring is the grit that connects all these elements. And not
Mhm. Well, it's definitely it's yeah. I would say it's the I would say it's the mortar. It's definitely it's the mortar um, that connects a lot of things. But this is because I mean, the way that I look at mentoring, I don't just look at it as mentee mentor, as my professional vocation for close to 2 decades now. I've looked at mentoring in a strategic way, developing frameworks, developing programs, developing processes, developing success metrics, developing mechanisms that enable you to quantify the impact of mentoring, helping organizations to link mentoring to their strategic objectives, their strategic development objectives, their leadership objectives, their organizational improvement objectives. So for me, the way that I view mentoring is very different, and a lot of people that look at mentoring, or organizations that look at mentoring, they look at it in a very loose way. A lot of times, when I speak to leaders, I'm speaking to organizations that are global. I'm speaking to people at partner level, CEO level, founder level, that are talking around mentoring, and talking around they want their mentoring to be more effective, or they want it to be more professional, or they want it to reflect the prestige of their brand. That's when you have to start looking at mentoring in a totally different way, because it needs to be systematized, needs to be standardized, needs to be communicated well. It needs to, people need to be trained and so forth. So when I'm thinking about mentoring, it's around all of those different aspects of how you utilize mentoring to improve organizations. But I never ever lose sight that the center of mentoring is people, and it's making sure that people are the center, and people are the beneficiaries. The mentors and mentees both glean so much from the experience, and it accelerates their development, it accelerates their insight, it accelerates their wisdom, it accelerates their progress. It's just it's the secret weapon. Mentoring, people don't get it, and I've, for years I've been speaking to people and leaders, and I've been very fortunate, to tell the truth, because I'm speaking at leadership level to a lot of people in a lot of different organizations, because I believe if you are going to transform organizational cultures, it starts from leadership, and it has to be cascaded down. So that's how I've worked for years. So a lot of times I've been able to influence leaders and to give them the broader understanding of what their mentoring provision could achieve. But definitely, mentoring enables people to become much more effective emotionally, because the questions a lot of times that people are asked, it's got to do with emotional intelligence, or when people are sharing where they are or how they feel, and you've got a good perceptive mentor, they're going to ask questions, and you're going to have to dig deeper, and you quickly realize your flaws, you quickly realize your ceilings, your limitations, when you realize you don't have answers to some of these questions, because you haven't reflected on these questions, or you haven't really had these questions enough in your life. So I feel it's a mixture of two things. It's got to be strategic if it's being delivered in
Wow.
organizations, but then it's always got to be person centered.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, you're on the Message Talk Show. I don't know if you're just joining us. You're on the Message Talk Show, and we're talking to Herman Stewart, about how to recognize the value of a mentor. And he's showing us and opening up to us how mentoring can help organizations rebuild after during the pandemic and after the season of people being away from home, going back into the office. And he's talking about putting structure and systemizing the whole process of mentoring. But what I'm worried about there is that because we're dealing with people and we put a system in place, is it sometimes just become a tick box exercise?
Well, it depends, in it. It depends if your system is there for tokenism or if it's there for orchestration. Order is important. If you're in an organization, I mean, it's in the word, isn't it? It says organization. So if you're delivering mentoring in an organization, it would benefit from being organized. Plus, if there's no system in place, you can't, um, or you will find it extremely difficult to be able to identify the return on investment. It'd be very difficult to identify the impact of your program, and that's why I create systems. It's more around being able to create frameworks. I think framework is an even better word. It's about having a framework that everyone that's involved in the mentoring program process, they understand their part in it. Framework is as simple as knowing how do you get onto the program, how do you recruit your mentors, the frequency of your sessions, when do you evaluate. It's all those things that are necessary if you want to have a program that is exceptional, if you want to have a program that's effective, and if you want to have a program that's efficient and one that is able to justify your return on investment, because investment isn't just a monetary issue. Investment is always a time issue as well, because mentors have to take the time out to mentor and mentees have to take the time out to be mentored. So you've got to be able to justify all of those things, and by doing that you see the great benefits of delivering mentoring at that level.
Wow, that's amazing. Let me take this back to the mentor because there's a question here coming from the public. And the question is, what sustains the mentor to be consistently giving? What sustains the
What sustains a mentor to be it's consistently giving? um I would say, for you to consistently be nourished, for you to consistently be replenished, for you to be consistently mentored, supported, guided, you to receive that as well. And I feel a lot of times people are mentoring and they may not necessarily know how best to mentor. Sometimes mentors are not trained. As I said, we're all mentors. I'm not naive to the fact that not everyone that is a mentor has to be trained to be a mentor. There's a lot of mentoring happening, and sometimes your mentor isn't, you don't even call them your mentor, but you're being mentored. You know, Parents are mentors. Um, Cub Scout leaders are mentors. People that work in faith groups, community centers are mentors. But when you start having to evidence and qualify your effectiveness as a mentor, that's when you start bringing it into a realm where it's professional mentoring. Yeah. So I would say, if you're a mentor and you're doing it and it's your profession, I would say you need to continue to be replenished anyway. And whether you're doing it within the community, wherever you're doing it, wherever, because the reality of it is you can't give what you don't have, you can't give what you don't possess. So you've got to have it first to be able to give someone.
You can't give what you don't possess. That is so true. You've got to have it first in order to give it out to someone. So, what have been some of your success stories? Mentor's mentor, as you're described.
I've got quite a few. I mean, I'll name. There's one I'm really proud of. There's two actually. um there's a few actually. But there's mentees of mine who I mentored when they were like 14, that I now speak to and they're in their 30s. And one is a leader in a school. One became a teacher and then chose to do something else. He's an engineer now. And these young people, um, well, they're now adults. They've got their own homes. You know, they've got their relationships. They've got children. And when I speak to them now, and I get them to come and speak to audiences, that want to see evidence or see the benefit of mentoring. Um, and I've spoken at a global organization and brought some of them to talk. I've spoken at local authority, and they just really testify of the transformation that mentoring done in their lives and how it really helped them to change how they thought. Because if they didn't change how they thought, they wouldn't be where they are now. And they attribute some of their success, especially when they were younger, just the guiding them onto certain paths, that the mentoring that I provided for them was life changing. You know, if you go on if you go on our website, everychildneedsamentor.com, on the impact page, there's lots of testimonies, and at the bottom there's a story of the mentee I'm talking about. His name's Warren. So there's some of our successes. I mean, but I've spoken, because of the work that I do. I've spoken to seen a politician. I've been Dubai, spoken to, been in government politics, what you call it, consultations. Had my work in a white paper, recommendation. Um, Spent time at Windsor Castle. Spent the night at the Queen's residence, because of my work. So in a sense, I've really brought mentoring to a new place. And as I said, I'm speaking to, and these are things that I probably take for granted, but
Wow.
I'm speaking to like partners in, law firms and leaders in, professional services and across different organizations around mentoring on the merit of what I've done and the fact that my name is synonymous with mentoring.
That's amazing. Now, my question here is, what national impact do you think mentors can have in our community? You've just gone global there.
Well, it's and see, this is, and I say this to even to community-led organizations. I say this to faith-led organizations. I say this to all different types of organizations. Put effort into make your operation professional, because the impact is based on organization. And when you start speaking about mentoring different cohorts, different stakeholders, different people, you have to make sure that you're you know doing your p's and q's, because um you got adults mentoring children. That's a safeguard issue straight away. And I feel a lot of times people are not even training their people to mentor. And I feel that a lot of times the impact that organizations could have, or communities could have, is not as it could be, because the lack of the professional aspect of it. So when you're thinking about getting professionals to become mentors in the community, the reason why a lot of mentors drop out of mentoring programs is because they're ad hoc, they're not predictable, they're not standardized. When you've got professional people that are used to professional culture, they expect to be trained, or they expect to have a booklet, or they expect to have some kind of supervision. They expect, and too many people are just left to do mentoring. And I feel that that's why a lot of community organizations or communities or even nationally have not benefited, and even big charities. I'm not even just talking it's your it's not just community organizations. I'm I've spoken to people from in big national organizations as well, and we're having a conversation about how they could make their mentoring much more structured and professional. So it's just making sure that you've put that in place as much as you can, and seek guidance, seek wisdom, seek training, seek a lot of things, and have leadership of your provision.
So that word you used earlier, framework, that seems to be the key here. A
Hmm.
framework in place that can be measured.
Yes.
But if you don't think like that, if you don't operate, if you're the basis on which you've been operating does not come from that kind of understanding, and you've kind of just when you've done something ad hoc and it survived and it had some results, how then do you shift someone who works in an ad hoc kind of way to then say, let's bring a framework in place and work in a more structured way? How do you shift someone to do that?
Well, you can't really shift people. They've got to have you've got to have a desire. Um, the reality of it is, you don't know what you don't know in it. If you don't know, then that is it's okay. But when you then find out that there's more, then that links into like someone's personal culture or an organizational culture. I feel if you have an organizational culture that you want to be exemplary, or you want to do well by people, or you do want to do good, you're going to probably see, okay, there's a better way to do it. Okay, you're interested in that, you know. Um, if you're a mentor and you discover there's a better way to do mentoring, you're probably going to want to do that. So it's very important for people to understand that when you're doing mentoring, and I feel that this is so important. I've worked, in charities, in public sector, and private sector, um, across the board, and m- structure is important. It's just important. It's important for those that are being mentored. It's important for those that are doing the mentoring, because it encourages consistency, it encourages transparency, it encourages accountability, it encourages quality. And that's why it just makes sense to invest the time. And there's times you then have to do the investment of finance to put something in place that reflects professionalism. But it's always remembering, and I feel it's important for us to go back to this place, is that it is for the recipients, it's for the beneficiaries. So more professional the structure is the more those children that need to be mentored, or those young adults or whatever, they get a better service.
They get a better service.
Yeah.
The framework that's been put in place. Herman, time is upon us. If there was a sentence, well, let's not say paragraph, let's not say chapter, if there was a sentence that you could give to the community right now about mentoring, what would that be?
Do mentoring properly, because mentoring is about legacy.
Mentoring is about legacy. Now, I never tied mentoring into legacy. Mentoring is about legacy. After you've gone. Wow. Herman, thank you so much for talking to you today. Time's upon us right now. And we've enjoyed this conversation so much. His time disappeared. But there was one more question I wanted to ask you, and we didn't talk about it. You're an author. You're a published author. What's the book called?
The book is called Every Child Needs a Mentor, and I would advise any aspirant mentor, or anyone that wants to understand mentoring structure or programs or so forth, to get that book. I feel it's to be able to spend so much time to write a book, pour pour one's life in to make sure that you can get the message, and you can buy that for £15, or less. That is like, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, every child needs a mentor. I'd say even go to the website everychildneedsamentor.com, and that would show you a lot around mentoring as well.
Every child needs a mentor. That is so true. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening today to myself and Herman Stewart talking about recognizing mentorship, mentoring. Mentoring is about legacy. Mentoring is about putting a framework in place. And mentoring benefits the recipient. So it means that when you're putting these things in place, you have to understand the people who are receiving it. It has to be structured so they can receive it in a very practical, monitored, measured. Organizations wants to bring change. Individuals want to bring change. And according to Herman, mentoring is the key. Am I
Yeah,
correct, Herman?
I would say it's definitely, when you got a key ring, it's definitely one of the keys, and it's an important one. Definitely.
It's an important key. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into the Message Talk Show. Join us on Thursday, 11 o'clock, while I go to my sponsor now to say goodbye to you all.
You are listening to the Message Talk Show and podcast. Do you believe you have something to share? Do you believe you have something to contribute? Do you have a story to tell the world, to share with your community? Gandhi said, man often becomes what he believes himself to be. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So join us on the Message Talk Show and podcast with host Alex Gordon.
So tune in on Thursday, 11 o'clock, the Message Talk Show. You can't miss the show. You got to be on the show. Don't miss this, guys. Don't miss this. Don't miss this.